Welcome to the Health Coach Nation podcast. I'm your host, Hailey Rowe, and I help you get clients consistently, market your standout offers, build your business foundations like your messaging, your niche, your offer, and I help you build a sustainable, profitable coaching business that works with your schedule. And I'm so excited to dive into the show. Here we go. Guess what? I'm so excited to announce that my free private training sharing how to book paying clients consistently without posting more or needing a big audience is now live for an encore. You can check it out at haileyrowe.com/training. You get to learn more about the inner circle. You get to learn the behind the scenes of what I share with my clients and learn how you can get your next clients without needing to obsess with stressful launches, annoying tech, all that kind of stuff. So check it out and can't wait to hear how it goes for you.
So today we have a special guest coming on, Michelle Maclean, to talk about how to improve your coaching skills. So if you are a coach and you're certified and or maybe you're in the process of getting certified and you really want to have confidence and competence as a coach, this is going to be the live for you. And for those of you who struggle, like you're a good coach, but you struggle with the sales and marketing side of things, I have a free superhero sales journal. It's going to take you through how to get your next sale and how to actually be able to deliver your amazing coaching skills. Because if you're good at coaching, it's your job out there to get good at sales and marketing and be able to coach people so that you're able to deliver your skills. All right, so I'm going to invite Michelle to join here. Now, Michelle, you should get a notification that you can go ahead and join. Hello.
Hey.
Hi. How's it going?
Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, great.
Awesome. So, Michelle, first, why don't you tell everybody what you do and how you got so dang good at coaching and teaching others how to coach?
Yeah, well, thanks so much, number one, just for having me, Hailey. I'm really excited to be here. So I'm a health coach skills mentor, and how I got to be that was a long journey over the last 10 years. I won't get into all the nitty gritty, but I started my journey off going to the Institute for Integrative Nutrition, IIN, and a bunch of other health coach trainings and certifications along the way, and had my own health coaching practice for about 8 years. And during that time, I also started to work with IIN as a coaching circle facilitator. And I started to notice a lot of new health coaches coming out of that program. There was a real gap around their skills. They still didn't really feel confident getting out there and coaching. They really didn't know how to run a coaching program. So I decided to sort of switch gears a little bit and do more of that. So I created a program to support new coaches in building their coaching skills. I'm also nationally board certified. And yeah, that's really become my passion these days, is really helping new coaches build their confidence by having those skills to really get out there and do some good coaching.
Absolutely. And one of the things I always say is when you're selling, if you're a good coach, you'll probably be really good at selling, because like on discovery calls, it is about discovery and asking the right questions and trying to help somebody find a solution for themselves, even if it's not your program. But, if they have a challenge, you can help them solve it, then maybe it is your program. But what would you say are some of the common things that keep health coaches or coaches in general from feeling confident about their coaching skills?
Yeah, I think, it's a lot of those, imposter syndromes, those fears and doubts that we have, thinking that we're not good enough, that we're not smart enough, that we don't have enough experience, all those, very common doubts and fears can really creep in and hold coaches back. And, I think the number one thing, it's really about a mindset shift for me that in many health coach training programs, I think, or not even with the training themselves, but, new coaches, they get into coaching because they've been the experts in their own lives, right? Everyone comes to them, for health and wellness information. And so then they get into a training program thinking, well, I want to formalize this and, I want to do more of that. I want to provide more expertise and tell people what to do and give them suggestions and recommendations. But then we actually get into coaching and we realize that's not what coaching's all about, right? Coaches have the questions, the clients have the answers. So that mindset shift, I think, for me, after I graduated from IIN and I was out there and I was coaching, I was doing it all wrong. I wasn't, doing real behavioral change coaching. And so when I went on and did other trainings and I got, better at my skills and I really learned what coaching's all about, this huge pressure was released because I didn't have to know it all. I didn't need to take, 1,000 courses learning all these different, medical issues and health challenges. I really just had to get good at those coaching skills. So those are some of the typical things. And like I said, it can release a whole lot of pressure when we can let go of that pressure to be the expert and to have to show up, to diagnose, prescribe, and treat like a doctor would, because we're not trained as doctors. So of course we're going to feel those doubts and fears, and that we need to learn more and know more in order to be a good coach. But if we can shift that mindset, be more of an ally, a guide, and know that we really just have to get good at our coaching skills, and that's what we need to be an expert in. Yeah.
Love that. Yeah. So I know so many people who think what if I don't have an answer? What if I don't know, how much liters of juice, whatever. Yeah. So I know that holds a lot of my clients back sometimes from taking action. They'll come to me and be like, I'm afraid I won't know all the answers. And if I actually get a client, then I'll freak out because I'm like, oh my gosh, now I have to deliver on this. Yeah. So what would be, and I also think you made a good point. It's not about what you say or having the information, quote unquote. It's also about who you're being in the session. How are you, facilitating progress and the right questions and being curious and holding space and not being in your head about, I need to have all the answers, because then it takes you away from actually fully being able to help the client. So what are some ways coaches who think I don't know enough, or I'm new to this and I've just never done it before, so I'm afraid I'm going to be really bad, what would you say they need to think about or do to start to change that and have the confidence to take on a client?
Yeah. And I think, this, and it comes up so much, I hear this almost every day. What if I don't know the answers to my clients' questions? And I did a whole YouTube video on this because it really is one of the top things that I hear. And, my number one thing is, again, back to what I just said, is that as coaches, our clients have the answers, right? So we really honor within them that they have the answers. They're the ones who know what's best for their health and well-being. And so we're the ones with the questions, right? So I think, again, it's the mindset shift of letting go this need to have all the answers and really shifting into that, as you said, that coaching presence of I am going to be good at, questions and the coaching process so that I can elicit, the answers from my clients. Or, empower them to find the answers, right? So we know from research that just giving people information and telling them what to do, educating, gets about maybe a 30% behavioral change shift with somebody. But behavioral change coaching can get like 90%. So what we really want to do, where the place we want to come from, is empowering our clients to want to find the answers for themselves, right? So number one, it is absolutely okay to say you don't know, right? If somebody asks you the macronutrient content of a carrot, right, and you don't know that, that's okay, right? You could say something like, well, I can go away and look that up for you and get back to you next time. But a much more empowering sort of coach-like way to show up is to, ask your clients some questions about that, right? Coach them around it. So that's probably wasn't a great example, but, if they ask you nutrition questions or, physiology questions or just sciencey questions that you might not know the answers to, inquire with them. Well, what do you know about that right now, right? So you find out, what do they already know about something? And then, well, what's the gap, right? What more do you need to know or would you like to know? And invite your client, take away his homework. Why don't you go do some research on that and see what you find, right? See what's right for you. And then come back next week and we'll talk a little bit more about it, right? So, yes, it's fine for us to, provide some education and some resources and materials and stuff like that for our clients, but it's so much more powerful when they can do that research. We don't want to do all the work for our clients, right? We want them to do the work. Otherwise, we're going to get really burnt out as new coaches, right? If we're going away and doing all this research and trying to figure it out and come up with all these answers for our clients, we're going to get really burnt out. So, number one, I think, is have that mindset shift to let go of the need to have all the answers. You aren't a medical expert, so you don't need to have all that knowledge. And really empower and invite your clients, to go away and do their own research and come up with those answers. Because I think they're going to be much more empowered to then go and take those action steps when they've come up with it. So yeah, that's kind of a good way to tackle it.
For sure. Yes. So part of the reason why I got my human potential coach certification and behavioral change specialist certification is because I agree with you. Information doesn't do it for the client. And I was noticing, like, when I was in the beginning days where I was just kind of giving information or posting content and being like, why are people not taking action on this?
Right.
I was like, oh my gosh, there's so much more to it. And it gave me much more confidence and competence. So I do think having a certification or being able to practice with clients and all that stuff totally serves a purpose. But you don't need like 20. If this is another thing I see people doing, is they think the next certification is going to give them all the answers so they can finally feel confident enough to coach. Isn't true. And I want to ask you a question about, so if somebody wants to go into what are some different ways to coach? Because a lot of times we think, oh, it's, asking questions and it's giving a little bit of information and whatever. But I know there's different ways to help a client learn something or see something or have a breakthrough. So can you kind of talk a little bit about some of the different ways to coach?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know all the different methods and, techniques and things out there. There's lots of great things that you learn about motivational interviewing and positive psychology, and all that can be great, as a foundation. But what I really love to teach, and I think this helps and brings clarity to new coaches so much, is I've created a 6-step sort of process for an ongoing coaching session. So this is once you've started working with somebody, you've set the foundation, you do maybe a few foundation sessions, you help them with some self-exploration and really, set the foundation for the coaching process. Then once we get into those ongoing sessions, it's really great to follow sort of a process. And I think once you have this process in place, it really gives you that confidence to dive into those coaching sessions. So I got a little handout here, and I can include this later, but, I've created just this, 60-minute coaching session and what you do sort of at each part of that. So I thought I'd just kind of run through that, and that I think might help. So of course you're going to start, with a nice warm welcome, a little bit of grounding and centering, maybe take, 5 minutes for that. We definitely want to jump into coaching and not have sort of that, initial chit chat take over the initial session. And then you're going to want to do an accountability check-in. So, as coaches, accountability is such a big part of it. And it's what we promised our clients that we would do, right? It's a big part of our role. So we have to check in on the action steps that we helped them create last time, right? How did it go? What were your successes? What were your wins, your learnings? How did that go? So we spend maybe, 10 minutes checking in around that. But we don't want that accountability check-in to become the entire session. So after we check in, everything's been great. We highlight successes, and maybe things didn't go great with those action steps. So your client may want to continue talking about that same topic today. And that's great. But we want to then set the agenda, right? Okay, do you want to continue talking about this today? Or is there something else that's come up for you? So let's really set the agenda so we know what the client wants to get out of the session, right? What area of focus, what specifically do you want to walk away with? And that really brings some clarity and focus to the session. After that, then that's when you get into the meat of the coaching session, what I like to call the exploring and processing part of the session. And that's probably going to take about 20 minutes. And that's where, you know, we would really look at the client's current state, you know, impacting their life, their health. And then we invite the client to look ahead to the future state, right? So if you could overcome this obstacle, you know, what's that going to look like for you? So we talk a lot about their vision, their ideal state, what they want to accomplish. And then, you know, the next section would be, okay, what are you going to do, right? How are you going to close the gap between those two states in your life, right? In your current state where you're unhappy, you've got a problem, a health challenge, and you want to get to this other place, right? So what we want to do is coach to the gap and help the client then come up with an action plan to get there. You know, other things that can take place in that exploring and processing section, that 20 minutes, you know, maybe it is a brainstorming session, right? So maybe you're brainstorming with your client to help them come up with some solutions. Maybe you are doing a little bit of teaching and educating in there. You know, it doesn't mean that we don't do any of that, but, you know, we really elicit from the client first. What do they know? Then we might help sort of fill in the gaps and find out then what they're going to do with that information. So lots can take place in that exploring and processing, that sort of meat of the session. And then, like I said, we get into action planning and accountability, really following up with our client. You know, how are you going to hold yourself accountable to these action steps that you've created for yourself? Also, what obstacles and challenges could get in the way of you, you know, getting to this action step? What other support systems do you have? So we really set that up, you know, making sure that the client knows exactly what they're going to do, when they're going to do it, when they walk away from the session. So we're really setting them up for success. And then, of course, we just want to end the session with a little bit of, you know, asking your client what they learned about themselves during the session. You know, what are their insights or takeaways? And then really acknowledging your client at the end and wrapping it up sort of on a positive note. So I just wanted to provide that as a framework, because once you go through all of that, like if you get through all of that in 60 minutes, you're doing great. And I think it just provides a lot of reassurance to new coaches to know that I've got this framework to follow, because, you know, many of us, and I did this in the beginning, what am I going to talk about for 60 minutes? You know, what if, you know, we end up in silence? What are we going to talk about? So I think by having that framework can really help give confidence to coaches.
Nice. Love that structure. And I know all of my type A listeners will really love it. And I think another thing to think about is there's different, so powerful questions is important, but there's also like exercises you could do, like visualizing or future self journal prompts or analogies to explain something in a better way if they're not getting it or seeing it. And so I think that you can, as you get more nuanced, as you know, in the beginning, you might kind of be really stuck to your structured script, like your structured skill that you just talked about. But as you start to get more nuanced, you will naturally be doing a lot of these things kind of in that hour session. Yeah. And I think that was really beautifully put and gone through. So thank you for that. And one of the things I wanted to ask you too is about accountability, because I know a lot of professionals who are coaches out there find that sometimes my clients fall off track, or they don't appreciate the sessions. Like they drag out scheduling their next session, and then they kind of fall off track. And then I feel bad because I'm the coach and I'm supposed to be keeping them accountable. So what would you say to coaches who feel like, how do I keep these people in the game, excited, accountable? And also, second question to that is, what do we do when we make it mean about us? I'm doing a terrible job because they're not staying accountable.
Yeah, so that's a great point. And I get this one all the time too. And I have a YouTube video that goes over how to set accountability and, you know, what to do when you feel like your clients aren't making progress and really sticking to their action steps. And I think, you know, so much in coaching kind of comes back to this basic principle that, you know, we show up during our coaching sessions and we, you know, use all of our skills and tools and techniques, you know, to guide our clients to that action plan and to hopefully, you know, they become empowered through the process to work on this stuff. But at the end of the day, you know, the magic happens back in their life, in the real world, when they're actually taking the action, right? So we do have to, what I like to say is we have to be lovingly detached to the outcomes, right? We love our clients. We want them to be successful. We want them to succeed, but it's on them, to take the action. And so we have to let go of, if my client didn't achieve their action steps, then I'm unsuccessful or I'm a bad coach, right? We've got to let go of that. So lovingly detached, wonderful. We're going to celebrate all of their successes, but they do have to take responsibility. And I think this empowerment piece and having our clients take responsibility is such a huge part of the coaching process. And, that starts in your discovery call. That happens in your agreement when you're outlining expectations and what your client can expect from you in the coaching relationship, that they have a huge role and responsibility in that. It's not just, on you again to do all the work, right? Your client has to do the work. And of course that comes, as you were talking about, as we become more confident in our coaching skills and as we develop these skills and, all this just becomes sort of natural, this our ways that we can help empower our client become stronger as well. So, yeah, I think, really spending time on accountability at the end of your session is also really key. What happens to a lot of coaches is they spend, a bunch of time just chit-chatting and, not really getting to the heart of the matter. And so, it's 2 minutes left of the session and we're like, oh my goodness, we have to set action steps and accountability, right? So we want to set a good amount of time, at least 15 minutes for action and accountability at the end. And like I said, you want to set your client up for success. So, it's not just your client's going to say, well, I'm going to eat healthier over the next week, right? Okay, let's break that down. What's your SMART goal? What's your SMART action step? Going through that SMART process, specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely. Those are all important, when we set goals and when we help our clients set action steps. Because if you don't go through that whole process, then perhaps, your client isn't going to have a good action step. So maybe they say, I'm going to go to the gym 3 times. Okay, when are you going to go? Can you put it into your calendar right now? What time of day are you going to do it? What do you need to do to get prepared for that? What other supports do you have, right? Can you actually sign up, for a class at the gym? So there's some accountability there, right? Who else can support you around this? Asking your clients some scaling questions, right? How important is this to you? How confident are you, on a scale of 1 to 10 that you're going to be able to actually complete this action step? And then we talk about plan Bs, right? So if you don't get there 3 times at, 5 p.m. on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, what's your backup plan? What else are you going to do? So we really want to, what I've learned to call it is this loophole-free accountability, right? We want to just cover all the bases so that we're not just letting our client walk away with just a really flimsy little plan that, we have no real structure around. So, that's going to help as well, I think, to really spend some time getting clear on all of that.
Nice. Yeah. And I think coaching partnered with creating an amazing program or offer. Like one of the things, I love the book, $100 Million Offers by Alex Hormozi. And he talks about how do you install, how do you make sure that they are going, unless they're of course there'll be exceptions perhaps, but how can you install as much as you possibly can into your program to ensure success? And so in addition to the sessions, if you wanted to, there's other ways you can install accountability or check-ins or certain exercises they can do to make sure things are, go in a certain way. Absolutely. Things you can provide that are resources. But I also want to highlight earlier in this session when you said you don't just want to always give them all the answers, because if you do that, you're never teaching them how to be self-sufficient after they graduate the program. If they don't know how to be resourceful, how to find, how to coach themselves through their own challenges and obstacles, they're always going to be codependent. And I need you to make me feel good, and I need you to give me all the answers. Yeah. So you really highlighted well on that. And I also want to ask you about, okay, so
Can I just make one more point on the
Yeah,
accountability before? Because I forgot to mention this. And, you know, I see a lot of this happening with new coaches is that at the end of the session, you know, the coach says to the client, how can I hold you accountable to this, right? What you were just talking about. And, you know, the client says, oh, well, it would be great if you could, you know, check in with me, send me a text, email, whatever it is, you know, on Monday and Wednesday and Friday when I'm supposed to be at the gym. And the coach says, sure, you know, I'm willing to do that. Well, you know, I really like, you know, new coaches to think about this differently, right? So you put it back on the client. Again, we don't want to do all the work, right? We don't want to create that codependency. And so invite the client, sure, you know, I'll be here for you if you want to text me after you go to the gym those 3 times and let me know that you've hit your action step. But I'm not going to be the one chasing you and following up with you, right? And then we also take it one step further and we say to the client, so you're going to, you know, text me 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, when you go to the gym. And what am I supposed to do when I don't hear from you, right? So like, that's the loophole free piece that I was talking about. We have to, you know, take it, you know, every step further to make sure that there's really no escape routes, right, for our client. That may sound harsh, but, you know, to really make sure that they're developing their own self-accountability, sort of what you were talking about. I mean, it's not about, you know, pleasing the coach or, you know, having the client feel like they need to fulfill it because, you know, you told them to do something, right? That's not going to set up a good coaching relationship. And the balance of power is going to be off in that kind of way. So we really want to have the client, as you said, develop their own, you know, self-efficacy, self-accountability so that they know how to do this right without us once our coaching program ends. So that was a great point that I just wanted to pick up on.
Yeah, I'm glad you did. And speaking of harsh, what do you do if, I know a lot of my clients tend to be people pleasers. And so we want to be our client's friend as opposed to their coach. So how do you juggle wanting to deliver hard observations and coaching to achieve a certain result compared to, I don't want to come off a certain way. I don't want to ruin the friendship. I don't want to, like, whatever it is that comes up when that friend zone versus coach zone. So navigate that.
Yeah, that's a great one. And I think, you know, it does come back again to how you set up the coaching relationship. Like, so much of it is, you know, it's a relationship, right? This isn't like going to a doctor or a therapist or a registered dietitian where you are going to an expert for advice, right? This is a relationship. We both have roles and responsibilities. And the empowerment of the client is only going to come when both of us uphold that, right? So it is really hard as, you know, people pleasers and introverts and empaths and, you know, so many of us as coaches, you know, have those qualities. And we just want to please and we want people to like us. And so, you know, by really setting it up and talking about those roles and responsibilities in the beginning, I mean, this isn't gonna, you know, probably come quickly for a lot of people. It is going to be once you develop your coaching confidence and once you've done this for a bit, you know, that you're going to be able to have those tough conversations. But, you know, when you set it all up, roles and responsibilities and everything in the agreement, it makes it so much easier to have a conversation. Like, if your client isn't doing their action steps, but you've talked about action planning and action steps in your agreement, it's going to make it much easier to have a difficult conversation because you can go back to the agreement. Remember, we talked about this, right? It's part of our agreement that, you know, you're going to go away and do your action steps. Of course, life can get in the way. Lots of things are going to come up. And you want to be gentle and kind with your clients, right? I mean, you want to foster that as well. But yeah, difficult conversations, you know, if your client is just going away week after week and they're not making progress, they're not doing their action steps, you know, you are going to want to, you know, have a difficult conversation. And, you know, I really believe that's our role, right? Your client didn't hire you as a friend, right? They hired you as a coach to move you from where you are today to where you want to be in the future, right? And so if your client keeps cycling backwards, which is going to happen in the process, they're going to fall off track. They're going to take 2 steps backwards. And that's when we're going to be there to catch them and bring them back on track, right? But sometimes, you know, again, if they're not paying as they should, if they're, you know, every week coming up with excuses about why they didn't do something, I think it's our responsibility to call them out on that and, have a coach-like conversation about it. It's just, I'm noticing that this is happening over time. I'm noticing a pattern. Have you noticed that? What's happening for you? Let's coach around it to see what's happening for your client and, use the same process of, where are you today with this? Where would you like to be? And then, what can you do to gently, move this? So I think, evaluation and checking in throughout your coaching program is so, so important. How's this going for you? Is it working for you? Is there anything we need to tweak and adjust in our coaching relationship to make sure that your client, feels comfortable and confident? Because maybe we don't want to assume what's going on. We do have to get curious and we have to ask, because otherwise, you're just going to continue to have this client who's not making progress. And that's not going to feel good for either one of you, right? Especially for new coaches, that's really, really hard and really discouraging and frustrating, when we feel like we're not doing a good job. So always just be checking in and have a solid agreement in place so that you can fall back on that. I mean, I really detail out every one of my responsibilities, every one of my clients' responsibilities. So we're really clear up front. So there isn't any, wondering about, who's responsible for X, Y, or Z. And, going back to that in terms of the foundation of the relationship. So we can have a conversation about it now because we've already agreed to it.
Yeah, setting really good expectations up front from the get-go so that you're not expecting your client to read your mind and you're not reading your client's mind.
Right.
I tell my clients, I can't read your mind. So we need to have a relationship where we are communicating. And I think that up front, setting that expectation, just like in your discovery calls, when you set the roadmap for the call, or in your videos, when you talk about what you're going to talk about, I think it's pretty important to, from the get-go, set those strong expectations so that there's no question marks or guesswork. And Michelle, this has been awesome. How can everybody connect with you and keep in touch?
Yeah, awesome. Well, it's been great to chat as well. So a few ways. They can join my Facebook group called Coaching Skills for Health Coaches. So that's a free group where we talk about coaching skills. I also have a YouTube channel and I post sort of coaching skills tutorials and things like that in there weekly. So they can just find me on YouTube under Michelle Maclean. Instagram, I'm Michelle Health Coach. I think that's my handle. It should be probably here in this. And yeah, if anyone's interested, I also have a free video that goes through this entire coaching process that I mentioned. So I don't know if we could put a link to that somewhere or whatever, but if people want a link to that video, it really goes into depth in terms of what to do at each stage of that coaching process. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being a guest, and we'll talk soon.
Awesome. Thanks, Hailey.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Hey, thanks so much for listening to this podcast. And if it's really helpful for you, I'd really appreciate if you share it and or leave a written podcast review. This tells the podcast sites that our show is useful and it will be promoted to more people that way. Thanks again.